Good morning, and for some of actually it's good afternoon to everyone. My name is Susanna Gurr, and I'm the Managing Director at the BC Centre for Employment Excellence. Welcome to today's webinar. We have a large audience today. We have over 100 registrations for this webinar. The topic today is best practices in supported employment. These are the best practices or the 9 guiding principles reflecting the research by case and recommended for excellence in practice. We wanted an emphasis from the field of practice, and thus this session will share the best practices through lived experiences from the perspective of a job seeker and employment specialist. We're also trying not just one, but 2 new things today. We're pleased to introduce the remote CART, Communication Access Real-Time Translation, or live closed captioning for this webinar. To access this feature, click the link in the chat or question box. If you decide to use it, please respond to the corresponding question in the post-webinar survey so that we can find out whether or not it worked for you or to make any necessary adjustment for future webinars. We will also be streaming 3 short videos during this presentation. Most participants will be able to view the video with sound, but some of you may only be able to hear the video. If that's the case, we apologize in advance and hope that you will find the audio useful. As usual, we'll begin with a poll. For those of you who are not familiar with the Center, it was created in 2012 with funding from the provincial and federal governments to act as a research and knowledge sharing organization for BC employment service providers and employers. The Center's mandate is not only to do innovative research, but also to find ways to share best practices with BC practitioners and employers and better integrate evidence into practice. We created this webinar series as a way to reach out and connect with practitioners. Through this series, we have highlighted new research by the Center, but are also tapping into the knowledge and expertise within the employment services community. You are invited to view the video recordings of previous webinars that we have posted on our website. Okay, the results of the poll are in. The question, are you familiar with the 9 guiding principles of supported employment? And you answered 25% yes, 32% no, and less than half, 43% said somewhat. I'm delighted today to introduce our 3 presenters. I think Annette Burrows, many of you in the audience will know Annette. Annette has been serving people with disabilities towards employment for almost 2 decades. Her experience ranges from being a home share provider and an employment specialist for people that have persistent mental health issues, those with mobility issues, and more recently has focused on transition of community inclusion to employment with agencies funded through CLBC. Annette is the Employment Strategy Manager at Langley Association for Community Living and Delta Community Living Society. She's also a community employment developer for Community Futures of the South Fraser. And if she's not busy enough, she's also written and facilitates a Supported Employment Specialist series at Douglas College and Okanagan University College. She also spearheaded the content for Canada's National Supported Employment Best Practices website. We also have Chat Bouchard, who's the Self-Determination and Employment Coordinator with CBI Consultants. Chat graduated from the University of Victoria with a degree in psychology and economics. He has been working with individuals with disabilities and their families for almost 10 years in various capacities with a focus on employment in the last 6 years. He has been instrumental in co-authoring a self-determination curriculum which is currently being used in school districts and community organizations throughout the province, Ontario, and the Yukon. We have Julia Hutton, who's a self-advocate. She holds 4 jobs and tells us that they are all awesome jobs, and she loves every single one. She'll tell us more about her experience at these positions later. She also loves to write, read, shop, and explore and discover community and neighborhood. The presentation will last for about 45 minutes. It's going to be very interactive with a dynamic discussion among our presenters. Please send in your questions throughout the hour by typing them into the question box. We will try to get as many as possible answered during and after the presentation. You have great resources here, and we really encourage you at any time during the presentation to use the questions feature on your dashboard to submit any questions or comments you may have, which will be facilitated by my colleague Greg during the discussion periods. I know all the presenters welcome the opportunity to engage in discussions with you. And now it's my pleasure to hand the microphone over to our first presenter, Chad.
Hi there, hope everybody's doing well today. So Greg, do you want to?
Click to the next one.
Sorry, next slide. There's all of us again. So to start off with, we would like to introduce you to Anthony. Anthony is a great example of how everyone can work with the right supports.
Say hi, Anthony.
Hi.
This is Anthony. Anthony is 24 years old and has autism. Anthony loves working out, playing with calculators, playing Math Blaster, music, calendars, hand sanitizer, food, and swimming. That's me, Mike. I'm Anthony's assistant. Anthony can do a lot of stuff on his own, but he needs help with some stuff too.
Oh, wait.
I really like my job because I really like Anthony. He's one of the happiest guys I know. I mean, he has grumpy mornings too, but usually he just looks like this.
Hey, Anthony, are you happy?
Try being in a bad mood while hanging out with that all day. Anthony makes some sounds and does some things that we find strange, usually when he's excited or frustrated, as a way of regulating himself and the environment. It took me a while to get used to, but now I just notice all the sounds the rest of us make. We do the same thing too, just in a way that we think is normal. Anthony has a pretty cool life. He goes to Northwest College, he writes poetry, and he hangs out with friends. Anthony loves being active and loves being challenged. Like when he did the high dive. It took him a dozen tries, going up a little farther each time, but he did it. This is Anthony's next challenge. It's a business, a delivery service. Anthony's excited about doing deliveries because he loves going out, meeting new people, and crossing things off his list. We'll go anywhere in Edmonton and deliver anything we can carry. Well, that Anthony can carry. He'll be doing all the heavy lifting. I'll just be helping him get around, by car, by bus, or by bike. I'd love for Anthony to become a bigger part of the community. I think it'd be good for him and even better for Edmonton. So give us a call.
So some of you that know me know that I am quite competitive. And when I started my role as an employment specialist, I wanted to know how to be the best employment specialist I could possibly be. And the best practice definition is a proven technique or methodology that through experience and research has been proven to reliably lead to a desired result. So when I started my job, I was hired as an employment specialist for Communitas, which was an agency working with people that had quite significant mental health needs. And my job was to help 10 people find gainful, supported employment in community. And I thought that's going to be super easy because 10 people, that seems relatively, not too difficult. And so within a month, all 10 people had a job. And the next month, 9 people had quit or were fired because I didn't really listen and I didn't pay attention to what they really wanted. And I thought, oh, you seem like, physically capable. Why don't you just drywall? And the person had told me explicitly that they wanted to be a baker. And I told them to use the drywall mud as icing on the wall. just splatter it on there. That should fulfill your value and your need. And I really had this epic fail, and I had to try to figure out what really is my job. And in that day, there was no one to tell me what the best practice for an employment specialist was. The video that you're going to see next really does highlight what a perspective is on person-centered planning. And it made sense to me when I saw this, that this is how I should be organizing my services.
From the origin of person-centered planning, we were trying to understand and see what it looks like when we just fit people into systems and defined their needs and saw them through the eyes of what a system needs for a person to be in order to generate the funding that's required and to basically service them. And system-centered work tends to be based on a medical model which assumes something's wrong with people, and it's the system's job to fix them. And so the system is invested in defining them in terms of their deficiencies and creating a treatment plan, and then working to help people get it right before they get to be members and be whole people in the real world. So person-centered planning offers a major contrast to that, which is to say that people don't belong to systems. They belong to themselves, they belong to their families and their communities. And if we see them in a different light by the capacities that they bring, and we understand that their communities are the place where they can contribute and be citizens, then our thinking shifts dramatically from how to fit people into systems and service them there to how do we support people to live good lives in community, and then how do we take what we need from systems and services so that services are not bad, they just tend to be wired for their own purposes, for their own self-interest. So a good person-centered planning process calls into question the way we use services and invites us to really change the way most of our services are configured to be more responsive to the people and the way that they want to live in the communities that they're in.
Contact us for more information, for a free demonstration or trial, or to sign up.
While people were doing really excellent work, it wasn't ever sort of, published, or there wasn't a place to go to when you started your job as an employment specialist in supported employment, how to do your work to the best of your abilities. And so in 2012, we conducted a big global literature research to find out, were there any countries or states, or was there anything documented for best practices in supported employment? And we pulled in the best of places like Scotland, Australia, New Zealand, some of the states of the United States, just looked all over the world for best practices. And we created a survey monkey that went out all across Canada in English and in French to ask you, the employment specialists, what you felt aligned with the work that you did as a best practice. From there, we came up with guiding principles, and at the CASE conference in Newfoundland, Labrador, which some of you were in attendance, you were able to be engaged in developing further the solidity of the 9 guiding principles. In January of 2014, the website employmentforall.ca was launched, and that is the material that we're going to be using today to sort of better describe for you from the perspective of the employment specialist and from a self-advocate, a job seeker, what that really means when it's put into practice. And that's what the front page looks like on the Best Practices website. And depending on who you are, You can enter any portal that pertains to you, and you'll have more time after the webinar, hopefully, to go to that and use it to its fullest extent.
Now let's take a closer look at the supported employment definition. Supported employment is a person-centered approach to assisting individuals with disabilities to prepare, obtain, and maintain integrative, competitive paid employment. A variety of support is tailored to individual requirements. Supported employment also includes self-employment.
The next slide you're going to see is one that has just been newly launched. What we believe is that supported employment is a team sport, and it needs to fully integrate the relationship that you build between the job seeker and the employers. And as many of you know, October is a supported living month and in BC here, and as such, many organizations and agencies are pulling together some really cool practices of recognizing employers and job seekers that are making a difference. And mentorability is one of those opportunities to match job seekers with employers to just develop an awareness and education moment. And this short video has just been loaded onto YouTube, and it's from an event that happened in Victoria last week. And you're going to meet Carl here, and Carl is one of the individuals that was matched with Shaw to actually be mentored. And Carl is going to talk a little bit about what that meant to him.
We're here at the Hotel Grand Pacific. It's all about celebrating employment, inclusive employment. So people of all abilities will have a chance to have not only a job, but a job they love. Carl, you work at Thrifty Foods.
Yes, I do. It's an amazing company. You know, it's a blessing to be hired and being part of a team that I feel like I'm welcomed everywhere I go when I come to work.
I love
it. It feels like a family. You know.
How has it helped your self-confidence?
It boosts. Like, my confidence was like pretty low, and it's like pretty extremely high right now. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Now let me tell you a little secret about Carl. He also has an interest in working in television. So he's been hanging out with us today, learning a few things.
Yeah, it's great.
What would you tell me a little bit about your interest in TV?
It's just everything. The lighting, like the camera, the talking, the interviews. Like, it's like everything. It's like I can't. Like, it's my mind that's blown when it comes to this type of stuff.
Why should people stay with us? Because the Royals Report is coming.
The Royals Report is coming.
Sorry, Greg, I can't see the slides. There we go. So as we're familiar with, the facts are still quite startling. 52% of people with disabilities are unemployed, while the Canadian unemployment rate is 7.6%. Unemployment rate is even lower for people with intellectual disabilities, 86%. People with disabilities work half as many weeks per year. In British Columbia, people with disabilities' yearly income is less than $11,000. All persons with disabilities can work if they have the appropriate and right support. In the next slide, we will start introducing you to the guiding principles that, again, were developed through CASE and through input throughout Canada and the United States. Here are the 9 best practices in supported employment. Number 1, choice and control. Employment support is guided by the job seeker to achieve their career aspirations. The job seeker still has choice and control over their job. It is their choice in applying for working at a particular job. The hours and duties are still dependent on the job seeker. Now let's hear from Julia and her experiences.
A barrier of mine was my family. My relatives had different ideas of where and what I should go and do for my job. That can be a challenge, but ultimately I was excited to try different job positions that worked well for me. Sometimes people think that there's only one way to do things, work 30 to 40 hours a week at the same job. And this does work for a lot of people. Maybe someday that will work for me, but for now, I'm getting different experiences at different jobs, and I like the variety. I feel confident with my hours and feel appreciated by my employers.
So I know that when we were developing the best practices, the zero exclusion, everyone has the right to work, comes up a lot. And so we decided to just make it very clear that the choice was not would you like to work or not, but the choice is what would you like to do for a job, and that there's a million ways to make a living. And together with the job seeker and the business, you want to be able to explore the job, to uncover the skills of the job seeker and how that best matches with the employer.
And again, it is person-centered. It is up to the person to decide on the hours, the job, skills and tasks that they would like to do. It is a person-centered approach. In the next slide now, we're looking now at paid employment. The job seeker receives the same rate of pay and benefits as all other employees doing the same job. Individuals with competitive positions, again, receive their paychecks directly from the employer.
Getting a paycheck is so important to me. With my level of independence, I would not be able to survive on my disability check alone. $190 a month is simply not enough to live off of. When I wasn't working, I didn't have a big connection to my community. I was living in a rural area and didn't have access to public transit. Since I started working, I have moved into shared living and am in a very central area, so getting to work independently is now no problem. Before I had a job, I felt I didn't have the same feeling of success as I do now. I felt isolated and not connected to my community or my peers. Since I've started working, I can now buy the things I want, pay my own bills, and not live off my parents and have control over my finances.
So I know that we have people listening all over Canada, and I know that the employment standard rules in BC are that if a person is creating a product or they're delivering a service, they need to be paid the same rate of pay as anyone else that would be typically doing that job. They have the rights to their taxes to be taken off their checks and to have their mandatory vacation pay and benefits, etc. We as employment specialists, we really need to be careful that while we're out doing, the best that we know how to match people to employment, that we do adhere to the employment standards of our own provinces. And in BC, it's pretty clear that volunteering at a for-profit company is not appropriate unless you have the proper paperwork in place or you're a practicum student. There's very few sort of loopholes per se. So just as an employment specialist, to really make sure that people are treated as full citizens in their workplaces. We're going to watch a little video here about a match that was made between a Rotary at Work initiative and an employment service in Delta. And Rotary at Work is been widely practiced on Ontario in the last couple of years, has been launched now in District 50/50 in BC, and I know many of you across Canada are starting to work with service organizations in a way that's meaningful for both the job seeker and the employer.
We're a small accounting practice. We deal with mainly small companies and personal tax returns. We work for probably about 130 different small corporations. The whole concept was introduced to us at one of our Rotary meetings. Here we're so busy at times that filing gets way behind. And so I talked to them after the meeting, and within a week or so, Graham was brought in. With Emily, it was really good. She kind of worked with Graham for, I think, the first 3 or 4 weeks, but he just caught on to the filing really quickly and things like that. So for us, it was seamless. Him and Matt seem to have bonded really well, because Matt has been the one that's kind of given him a few other things.
I suppose maybe worried that, if he'd be able to, pick up the duties, but he's done great. We first started out just doing simple things like filing, but now he's moved up, and we get him doing some data entry sort of things, and And yeah, he's a good addition to the team, works pretty hard, nice kid.
He's fit in really well.
So guiding principle number 3, job seekers, employers, direct service providers determine the individualized strategies providing support that will assist in career enhancement and ultimately facilitate long-term satisfaction for both the job seeker and the employer. Again, these are person-centered strategies which will look different for each job seeker. Also, what we want to make sure is that we are aware of what the employer's needs and wants are and matching them up with individual strengths, skills, and talents.
The support that I had was phenomenal. My support worker, who is also my job coach, supported me through the process, from figuring out my goals and putting in a plan to achieve them in both the social and employment level. As an employment specialist, she taught that starting small was the best way if you were to reach your employment dreams. By starting small, I mean be willing to try new things. Be open to new ideas and challenges. Sometimes things don't work the first time, but with a good attitude and focus on my goals to find employment, it is possible. And in starting small, it helped me reach to where I am now with 4 jobs I love and meeting many more new friends.
So like I mentioned before, that supported employment is like a team sport. Again, my competitive nature comes out with my metaphors, but we find that it's most successful when you can engage at least 3 partnerships to help, really uncover the needs and the abilities of the job seeker, and then to find the supports that can come alongside.
Guiding principle number 4 is full inclusion, both socially and economically. The job seeker is involved in the workplace socially with other participants and economically by receiving a paycheck directly from the employment.
When I wasn't working, I didn't have as many friendships, nor was I in contact with people on a daily basis. Having coworkers is a great feeling. We have a lot in common because of our job. We can ask each other questions and have fun while we work. I get invited to activities outside of my work now. I feel included and the focus is on other topics, not on my disability. I like that I have so many abilities that I can highlight. I think this is what happens when you find the right job fit. Your quality of life goes up and you feel like a contributing citizen. You feel good about yourself and your accomplishments. You look forward to going to work, socializing, helping people, and getting a paycheck. You simply feel proud.
So what we like to emphasize for the employment specialists is that we really need to get out of the way. Julia needed to have the opportunity to build those relationships without the job coach being in the way. The job seeker needs to own their job, and it's our job to be able to set them up for success. And those things can be the facilitation of making sure that, work breaks are taken with other co-workers, that the job coach is somewhat invisible or looks like another participant in the workforce, and that the job seeker is being treated just like all the other employees. And it really does make a difference to self-esteem when you are getting paid for what you're worth.
And that can be tricky with customized employment, finding out exactly what the customized position is worth. But working directly with the employer and having that relationship, a right wage should be able to be developed at a fair and competitive wage. The job seeker is being paid what the job is worth, and they do have those choices on how to spend their money or how to save their money however they like. So guiding principle number 5 is job search. A timely and appropriate support is provided to achieve successful employment. This can vary from job seeker to job seeker, but again, as long as we're cognizant of time and we recognize and do this in a person-centered approach.
The most important step was searching and going on to the situational assessments to find out what job was right for me. This process is like a working interview. This part of the process was to find out if it was a good match on the area of work I chose to enter into. It takes some time, but at the end of it all, the entire process is and was well worth it. Employment specialists need to respect that each job seeker has a pace of their own, but we are the catalyst to keep the process focused on getting the job, not just preparing to get the job.
Number 6, individualize. Negotiate to meet the unique specific needs of the employers and skills of the job seeker, one person at a time.
As I have said before, we want to be a part of all that is happening in our lives. We want to direct our services. Listening to the individuals you support is so important. If a person does not feel that they are part of the employment process, the results may not be as positive. Include the individual you support each step of the way. Explain the process so there are no surprises. Offer the individual choice. This is their job, and hopefully it will be for the long term.
Mm-hmm. And I think the beauty of supported employment, like I said before, that there's a million ways to make a living, that we as employment specialists really need to be creative and think outside the box. No one is just like Julia. No one is just like any other job seeker. There is not one job position like recycling or bagging groceries that fits every single person with a complex need. We all need to be able to match those skills and abilities uniquely to what the business need is. Natural supports is number 7. So the employment supports are as unobtrusive as possible and may fade over time by building on community support and social capital. I just like to preface this by saying that some individuals that we serve require personal supports no matter where they are in community or in their life. That might be for behavioral needs or physical needs, but it doesn't mean that the support that we're going to be giving them is to do their job. We would be as unobtrusive as possible and let the job seeker or the new employee own their job as much as they possibly can.
Natural supports. We all need natural support, all of us. We need our surrounding friends and family to help guide us to our goals that we want to reach. If we don't have natural supports, we do not feel like we are a true part of our community or workplace. These supports are the ones we need the most for when we are having social trouble as well. One of my favorite parts of my jobs is the people I work with. They are the ones that now offer me a hand or give me reminders when I forget something. Natural supports are so important because they make me feel a part of the team, just like any other employee. I may have started my job differently than most people because I had support getting the job and learning new skills, but then the natural supports took over and they are just as important. So my unique natural supports. My planner, my epic book of everything. I keep it everywhere with me. My iPhone, can't go without that. My home share provider and relatives. Can't go without my home share provider. We text each other back and forth. My friends, we need them. My bus schedule, and my employment team.
So long-term support. It's available to all stakeholders to ensure that people are maintaining their employment stability and that they can achieve their career enhancement. And that support is provided on an as-needed basis for as long as needed. I know personally, being in this work for, like Susanna said, almost 2 decades. That sounds like a long time. Not that old. But, I still have employers calling and asking for support. And I might not have connected with them in many years, but I'm still going to be there to support them. It's just, the best way to make successful matches.
I have for my support plan, I have a list of phone numbers of my employment coaches, friends, that I can call them with good news or concerns. I would like some support to ask for additional tasks and a raise at the tea shop. I wouldn't mind more hours of work to fill in for the seasonal hours at the garden center.
So the employment specialist support is on an as-needed basis. It's person-centered and it's communicated with all the stakeholders and it's based on their method of choice. So if Julia prefers to be texted rather than called, I know we had some trouble emailing, that wasn't the greatest way to communicate, then you choose that method that best supports the person as well as the employer. I mean, many of us have had employers that have said, you know, don't call me, I'll call you, stop in once a week, come every shift. It just really, we have to maintain the method that best suits. And we shouldn't promise what we can't deliver, but we shouldn't deliver less than what we know is needed. And that means that we have to really manage our time well, that it's really critical that we are on, you know, call for those employers that need us and the job seekers. And as we know, jobs aren't just from 9 to 3, Monday to Friday. So that might mean that we have to be available and flexible. And then not to forget that there's always career enhancement, you know, more hours, maybe performance reviews. We would like to be able to empower people to be as confident as they need to be to apply for second jobs or third jobs, right, on their own with less support from us, but always to be able to have a plan that's verbalized and communicated with everyone that's involved.
So number 9. So the last guiding principle is continuous quality improvement. Stakeholders involved in the evaluation of services and service provider implements improvements. Supported employment services strive to provide the best employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities with the best possible supports to achieve success.
For suggestions for improvement, so focus on each person as an individual. Understand that we make mistakes and that we can learn from them. And to encourage us and let us make choices and role play more to improve in our confidence.
We also, oh, sorry, go ahead, Chad.
Oh, no, so with that, you know, with the quality improvement is being open to hear what doesn't work and then be courageous to change. Be broad in your approach to gain the feedback of your services. You know, ongoing surveys, workplace visits, phone calls and emails to both the employer and job seeker must occur. Again, as Annette mentioned earlier, you know, to what works for the individual. You know, we're all in this together and we do want to, you know, what works with customized employment, what improvements could be made. You know, we want to measure our successes and our future challenges. Annette?
So just in closing, we've given you a real brief tour through the 9 guiding principles from our perspective as support workers or employment specialists, and from Julia's perspective, we've tried to give you some perspectives from the employers through the videos. But we'd really encourage you to go to employmentforall.ca, and on that website, again, you can go through these 9 guiding principles in a more thorough way. And if you're a support worker and go through that portal, you can go through the 9 guiding principles, take a little bit of a quiz. It doesn't matter if you get 1 right or all 10 right, it's just another learning opportunity. You can print a certificate for yourself after you've completed that, and then you can choose to enter your name into a database. That database is used to match employment specialists with employers. We've had 23 matches in BC from this website, and it's available, of course, throughout Canada. Each province has a hub person that will be collecting the databases and doing the matches for your province between employers and supported specialists. So if I just hope that it's used as a resource so that when you start your job or you're struggling to know what is the best practice and what I should be doing, that you can refer to the 9 guiding principles and not do epic fails like I did right from the beginning. And just that greater knowledge does lead to better practice. And if you have any suggestions for us on this website, you can just hit the little button at the corner of the website that says contact us, and we're happy to get back to you and make changes to the site as necessary. And we really thank you all for listening in today.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi, folks. It's Greg here with the center. Thanks to Annette, Chad, and Julia for so graciously hosting this presentation today, this discussion. I know a lot of the questions that have come in so far have been around some of you not being able to see or hear the videos, and we do apologize for that. Hopefully, many of you have been able to take advantage of the video streaming, along with the closed captioning. We just took a quick look and it looked to be working quite well, so hopefully that was your experience as well. I want to encourage you, because we do still have about 10 minutes or so, to send in any questions you have. We did have, I think, what I see is our first content-related question to the presentation, so I'm just going to throw it out to all three presenters. And the question is, what has the presenters' experience been around negotiating pay for customized work?
Chad, do you want to take that first?
Yeah. So again, it's negotiating pay. So obviously, we're starting off at minimum wage. We're starting off, what the minimum wage and what people would be making doing that same job. So obviously, with customized position is customized employment. We're taking bits and pieces. So it all comes down to that relationship you have with the employer. The stronger the relationship it is, the more easier it is to come up with a wage. Again, the internet is great to find out, different jobs, different duties, what sort of wages are applicable for that job. Honestly, I haven't had any real problems. We start off, if everybody in the business is making $11, it's an entry-level position, and then we are, after 3 months, there's that review. That's been my experience, and we've been, being able to start with that. Or if the job is a little bit more detailed or high-tech, then the wage goes up accordingly. Annette?
Yeah, so probably one of the most unusual customized jobs that we couldn't find a wage for was a hydration therapist. So this was a position where a young woman that really valued serving others and enjoyed being around people that were of retirement age was hired in a position to serve water to all the residents of an old folks home. And you try Googling hydration therapist, you will come up with some real interesting hits on the Googler. But we just felt that we were negotiating with the activity director, and she came up with an amount that she thought would be fair. This was a 2-hour position every day from 3 to 5, so it was a person in graduating from high school. So we thought, we'll negotiate. At that time, the minimum wage was a little less, but she started at $11.50. And because it wasn't a full activity director position, but it really wasn't, in the kitchen, so it was really difficult to come up with a wage. But that seemed to be fair for all parties concerned. At first, I know that there was talk about her volunteering to do this work, but we found that the care home, people need water to survive, and people just weren't getting, enough liquid into their diet every day, and so she served a real basic need and an important need at that old folks home. I hope that answers the other question about thinking outside the box. I mean, we have people doing really unusual jobs that just really suit their needs. Julia's got 4 different jobs, and they each attach to a skill differently, right?
Yeah. To start with, I'll list them down. I work at a garden center, and I organize, I water the plants, hold on, let me get this in mind here. I clean the place, sweep it back and forth, and sometimes organize inventory, price the inventory. And then at the tea shop, Applewood Country Gifts, I do bussing, which is clearing the tables and the dishwashing, and folding the boxes and the napkins, and pulling apart the doilies. And then at Milieu Family Services, I'm a facilitator, and I help, sorry, pardon my words here, help individuals to learn independence, to learn how to advocate for themselves. And the fourth one is by contract, and it's called BC Self-Advocacy. And it's to help individuals advocate for themselves in employment.
Great, and thanks, Julia. And as we usually have when we throw out the call for questions, there's a number coming in now. So Annette referred to a question about thinking outside the box. I'm not sure if you can all see the questions here, but we heard a number of great examples there. The next question is, do you have any suggestions when presenting a job seeker to the employer in terms of how much information should be shared regarding the person's disability?
Yeah, so we have a legal obligation not to share any information about their disability unless the job seeker has given consent that what you're sharing is related directly to their disability and how it might affect employment. So this became very relevant to me when working with people with mental health issues, and some of you out there are working with others that have what we would deem more as an invisible disability. And I always was very careful about when to disclose. There's advantages and disadvantages to all of it, but first and foremost, it needs to be consensual between the job seeker and yourself as to when that information can be shared and how appropriate it is for the employer to know the details of the disability, if it pertains to the job or not. So many of the individuals I served that had schizophrenia or major depression, it wasn't relevant to the jobs that we were seeking, and so it wasn't it wasn't an issue about disclosure. It was up to them when they wanted to share that information.
Okay, thanks, Annette. Do you have anything to add on that one, Chad?
No, I totally agree with Annette. Again, it is up to the individual, and it is what relates to the job. So all of us have different medical needs, medical issues, and anything like that. So even myself, I do have to eat between 5 and 6. So that's something I'd let my employer know that between 5 and 6 o'clock I do have to eat, due to my illness or something like that. So as long as you're straightforward and upfront in the beginning, so it's not a big surprise. Yeah, I haven't had any concerns with that.
Okay, thanks, Chad. We have a question specifically to guiding principle number 1. How do we balance the fact that inclusion also means that you do not always get the job you want and may have to compromise, just like the wider population has to at times, to get any foot in the door in any work experience?
On that one, sorry, it might take me a bit to think. So what I think is I'm going to say it's up to the employer to offer that inclusion. Like, if they know that the individual has a disability, that they should learn to accept that. And because all in all, that whether they are a person with disability, they are still a person, and they are included in society. And I don't know how to say this properly, but they are still people, and they need a paycheck too. That they have a life to live as well as like everybody else does. And as per se, that all of us are not perfect, and we're all human. And whether we have an ability or a disability, that it's a required living for every single one of us.
Mm-hmm. The question about choice and control, I think Julia has shared with me that at the beginning, people thought that she should be working 30 to 40 hours.
Yep.
And in fact, they went in and asked your manager for more money, specifically some people, not a job coach, but a person in your life, right? A family member.
Mm-hmm.
And the control was no longer in your hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you feel about that?
It felt very invasive. and that it didn't it just didn't feel good. That I didn't have. It's like I didn't have the decision to tell my manager what hours I really wanted. Is that they were just coming in to expect hours for me that were beyond what I could do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my favorite incident.
No. Julia, looking back to a time before you.
Okay, and the next question here is for Julia as well. Looking back to a time before you were employed at your 4 jobs, what have been the major wins or meaningful moments for you?
So before you were employed, what were the major moments, the turning points between when you were volunteering and doing all those work experiences, and then all of a sudden something happened? What was the major thing?
Oh, I'm going to have to say the major thing that really started coming in before I was employed was when I started volunteering at Milieu. That was like the first turning point, when it was like the first opportunity that something might be there to grab. Mm-hmm. And as time passed on, and I'm going to say from at the food bank, when it was just the last moments of that job just jumped right in. And it was like the first thing I grabbed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think you shared with me that your employment specialist started seeing the potential for you to actually gain money for what your value, right? And they did a discovery mm-hmm. with you that uncovered those skills mm-hmm. and how that might match to a working place to have a paycheck.
Exactly. So what they did is we sat in with my family, and they did what is called discovery. So we all sat down, all in the table, and we discussed my likes, dislikes, hobbies, habits, and with each of those, they were able to see potential in order for me to find a job.
Great. Thanks, Julia. So I think we're nearing the end of our time today. I want to thank again Julia, Annette, and Chad for being our guest presenters today. Oh, wait, we have Suzanne who wants to ask a question here. So we have one more question.
Yeah, listening to some of the examples about thinking outside the box, and I've heard it also from other practitioners too. Some of these things are so creative. Is there a place where people can maybe contribute and kind of share tips where, to show examples of these thinking outside the box, so that it can, kind of energize or promote different ideas as well? Because I find it very inspiring when I hear them.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the Upper Fraser Valley and Lower Mainland here, we have a networking group called SEAN, which is Supported Employment Advocacy Network. And it's an informal group that meets formally once every 2 months, and we rotate around to different agencies to meet. We share those unique sort of positions with each other and build on them. And I know that, an experience can be shared in Vancouver, that can come out to Chilliwack, that can, be replicated in Kelowna, and that kind of, you just need a little spark to get it started and then know it's a possibility. And you can even say, I know in the past I've heard of this happening. So maybe your retirement home needs a hydration therapist, right? And so our group is very, like I said, informal, and we email each other quite often if we need a lead or need a spark. It's the brainstorming, I think, that helps. It's really valuable to network with one another and to find those, those real creative ideas.
Thank you.
There's also there's a CLBC website, group. It's called the Employment Hub. So it's members that have been involved in the Community Action Employment Plan, and we share a lot of different ideas. Training on customized employment, different jobs, positions, webinar tips and everything like that. And Shelley Gerber is in charge of that, the regional employment coordinator. And I'm pretty sure like everybody, you know, who's involved in employment would be able to get access to that. And I can forward you her email, you know, send me an email, and if you want to get involved in that. I know in Vancouver, CLBC also has a number of different roundtables. So there is one in Surrey, there's also one in Burnaby. And again, same as what Annette, you know, mentioned, you know, every 2 to 3 months we do meet. But there is a presentation, and then, you know, there's a discussion. And if there's something that the group wants to discuss, you know, the next meeting will go in further detail of that. So there are some, you know, groups out there. It's just finding them and, you know, having a place to have all this information together.
Thanks, Chad. So I've just shared Shelley's email, and I know she's on the call today, and she just let us know that be happy to hear from folks. So I posted the email in the question box, and so you should be able to see it there. And you can see, again, I'm back on the slide with everyone's contact information. There were a few more questions that came in just at the last minute here. So like our presenter said, feel free to send them in any of those questions that you have. So I want to thank our presenters again, and of course, thanks to all of you out there for attending today. As usual, the session was recorded, and we'll post the video of the presentation on our website and send you all the link in an email within the next week. As always, we welcome your input and feedback. We would also appreciate any suggestions you have for future webinar topics. Speaking of, we have our next webinar on November 24th. You can see the information here on the screen. It will be on the topic of translating Aboriginal traditions to employment, and more information and registration details will be included in the follow-up email. So that ends our event today. On behalf of my colleagues and presenters here at the center, and Chad's just down the road at the office at CBI Consultants in East Vancouver. Thanks to all of you for presenting or for participating in today's discussion, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.